Our ongoing coverage on the Global Entrepreneurship Summit set to start at the end of this week continues on Newsdesk. We will be speaking a little later on to Joel Masharia. He's the CEO and founder of Abacus, and he'll be telling us what Abacus does and his expectations of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. He'll be joining us a little later on in this bulletin, as well as the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Adan Mohammed, who will be joining us from our town studio as we focus on entrepreneurship in the run-up to that summit. Now, let's start off with that visit and some confirmation coming in from Washington that President Barack Obama will not hold any talks with Deputy President William Ruto during his visit. During a White House press briefing, U.S. Advisor on National Security confirmed to journalists that Obama has no plans to meet Ruto due to his ongoing case at the International Criminal Court. Ashamwelu reports.
As Kenya goes through the roller coaster of anxiety, excitement, and logistical nightmares of hosting U.S. President Barack Obama this weekend, a shadow of doubt has hung above everything else. President Uhuru Kenyatta would meet his American colleague on Saturday. But where would his deputy William Ruto be? Will he be in that same room as bilateral talks kick off? Although headlines have hinted that Ruto's case at the ICC gradually collapsing, the DP still carries that heavy tag that comes with being on trial in front of a global gallery.
How you doing? How's business?
And that very question of whether the visiting American president will have any engagements with Ruto haunted the president at his last media briefing.
He is coming to meet the government that is in place, that includes all of us. So I think the question you're asking is pretty irrelevant, because last I recall the deputy president was part of this government. So we shall all be meeting and proceeding with what we need to do. The business is between the United States and Kenya, and the strengthening of our already very strong relationship and partnership between our two countries.
Now, the White House has confirmed how close the deputy president will come to engaging President Obama.
I don't think he has any plans for any separate engagements with him. He is a member of the government, so I imagine that he may be present at some of the events.
But even with that nail-on-the-coffin announcement by the U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice, some questions are still unanswered. Will President Obama shake William Ruto's hand? The spectacles of power play have often overshadowed strong agenda during meetings between world leaders. Just recently, President Obama had an awkward moment with Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. At the G7 summit in Germany, Obama was deeply engrossed in talks with IMF's Christine Lagarde when al-Abadi cozied up to steal some moments with the U.S. ruler. But President Obama only gave a cold shoulder, forcing the embarrassed Iraqi leader to back away slowly from the situation. So when Obama finally meets Kenyan leaders this weekend, the cameras will be just as keen on the optics that are more often than not much louder than the speeches. Ashamwelu, KTN News.
Has President Obama's security while in Kenya been compromised? The U.S. media is reporting that a Kenyan Airways official allegedly breached security protocol by publishing the arrival and departure times of Air Force One, which prompted scrambles by White House security officials. Here's Sharma Mani with the details.
The majestic vehicles that are part of President Barack Obama's entourage arrived in Nairobi hours ago, causing a stir. Security in and around Nairobi is airtight. Secret Service's presence in the city to secure the world's most powerful leader is strongly felt, as some areas such as the Kasarani Stadium, where President Obama will address Kenyans on Sunday, have been cordoned off. But in the midst of a joint efforts by the Secret Service and Kenya Police to tighten security.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
The U.S. media is probing a possible security breach by Kenya Airways. A Kenyan Airways official allegedly sent an email with the expected time of arrival and departure of the presidential plane in Nairobi, even though it is said to be standard White House practice never to publish the 40 to 50-minute window during which Air Force One is scheduled to land or take off.
it has in no way affected our approach to or plans for the trip. And it's also my understanding that oftentimes some of this information turns out to be not entirely accurate. But I don't think it in any way is disturbing our plans.
Kenya Airways earlier announced the duration during which the Kenyan airspace will be closed down for the arrival of President Obama. It is unclear whether this will remain the same. Kenya Airways is also yet to address the accusations against their official. Sharma Mani, KTN News.
All right, and before we go, you can see on the bottom of your screen the news just in. The Court of Appeal has approved the awarding of the 50 to 60% pay rise to teachers effective the 1st of August 2015. The court is yet to determine the payment of the 37 million shillings in arrears. Earlier this morning, both unions, that's NUT and KUPPET, had asked the government to pay them using the contingency fund if no money had been allocated. You remember, TSC said they do not have the money to pay the teachers based on that court ruling to award them the pay rise, saying it wasn't budgeted for in the 2015-2016 annual budget. The teachers asked them to use the contingency fund. The Court of Appeal has now said that the pay rise for teachers should be effected next month, yet to determine on the arrears that are set at 37 million shillings. Keep it KTN and we'll give you more details. Let's carry on with our special coverage of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. Now, ahead of that meeting, KTN has over the last 3 days held comprehensive discussions with students and lecturers at key Nairobi universities on the fate of Kenya's entrepreneurs after the summit. Last night, we were at Strathmore University, and here is part of that discussion.
Thank you, Alan. I would say that banks in Kenya have not been as proactive as they need to be in funding entrepreneurs, specifically startups or entrepreneurs who are innovative and don't have a history with a certain product or a history with whatever it is that that they've brought to market. You find that the only sources of finance that there are would be from venture capital funds, which aren't that many in Kenya. So generally there is a problem, and banks need to look at what they can do for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, very quickly, what was your experience? Tell us a little bit about your business and what was your experience in terms of financing before you were able to bridge that gap?
In my particular experience, I run a plant that converts agri-residue into biomass briquettes at a large scale. And in my experience, we had to work with specific competitions that raised funds for innovative ideas. Also had to work with one specific, you could call it a venture capital fund of sorts, that actually is associated with the Kenya government. That's ICBC. But there are a few others which would work with entrepreneurs and would help them raise the funds that they need to get started. But a lot needs to be done by the commercial banks.
All right, thanks a lot. Yvonne, maybe we can pick up from there in terms of financing of ideas for innovators here.
And that's a good place because you know, there's a Kenya Climate Innovation Center here, and when we had this discussion, I found it quite exciting, the 5-step process. Perhaps Mr. Mungai, the CEO of that, you can talk to us a little bit about that and how exactly that works, if you can go through the 5 steps very quickly. Because what I found interesting about the idea is that you even give grants to test the idea, which is, I suppose, extremely important. But you know, just tell us about your 5-step process.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And I think the real challenge, that we have in this country is that valley of death. And John, you talked about it, and a lot of entrepreneurs here. Yes, you have brilliant ideas, but the most unfortunate thing is that you can't see that idea through the valley of death. And what is this valley of death? Is where the banks are saying, we need to see that you've sold 100 biogas systems. But how do you do that? I mean, first of all, you need to prove your concept, and once that concept is proven, then the banks will really appreciate what you are trying to offer. And in this case, that's where the Kenya Climate Innovation Center comes in, and we provide proof of concept grants up to the tune of $50,000, which is free money, for you just to play around with your idea. If you succeed, then we take you to the next step, which is again what I call scaling. And when you are scaling your idea, really what then we need is commercial money.
All right, now during our tour of universities this week, we're also able to speak with startups, and that will continue today as well on Newsdesk. Joel Macharia will be talking to us about his organization. It's called Abacus. It's just 9 months old, so you want to stick around for that as we continue to inspire you this afternoon. Let's now take you to Siaya County. Our Kisumu-based reporter Victor Ogale is joining us live from there. Now, he's attending the Siaya County Investment Tourism Expo, seeking to spur economic development in that county. What is the latest that you have there, Victor?
Well, Yvonne, the Business Expo is already underway here in Siaya County in Kogelo Village, and various people from various business divides have converged here just to push the Siaya County agenda in terms of the economy of this county ahead. And I'm joined by the governor of Siaya County, Rasanga, who's going to give us 1 or 2 words about today's event. About today's event.
Yeah, today we have the Tourism Expo, which among other things is just to enlighten people about the coming of Obama. We are alive to the fact that Obama is arriving tomorrow. But we want to put it to the world that Siaya is an investment destination. It is not just Siaya that we refer to as Kababa as such, but it is a place where investors can invest. We have Lake Kanyabuli. We have Sir Obama as one of the tourist attractions that we have locally here, and we also have Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Memorial Foundation, which can is also attracting, and we have Gotramogi Hills that would be very attractive to visitors. So number one, we are welcoming visitors to come in, and especially we have white sand beach pastimes in Lake Victoria that can attract 5-star hotels that would, accommodate tourists. I have land around Lake Kanyabuli that I would be giving to any interested investor that would be putting up a 5-star hotel. Yeah.
Mheshimiwa, final one, what do you seek to achieve? What are your expectations at the end of this expo, this 3-day expo?
That we shall be having investors coming to invest in Siaya in various fields that are locally available. Tourism apart, we also have potential in various areas like agriculture. We have potential in as far as land is concerned that has not been overused. And 2, we have 2 rivers that cut across Siaya, that is namely Nzoia and Riala, that could be used for irrigation. Along River Yala there is a fall that you can easily use to generate electricity. These are things that any investor would be interested in, so that employment can be created within Siaya, to the Siaya residents.
Well, thank you very much. That was Siaya Governor Colonel Rasanga, who, after Newsdesk, he is going to give his...
All right. We seem to be having issues with that signal, but thank you very much. At least we're able to get as much as we could from Victor Ogale live there, the residents of Siaya County. Regardless of the fact that Obama will not be going there, but they are using this opportunity to definitely see if they can spur economic development in that county, looking at tourism, sports, and investment in health. We now want to speak to the person who's in charge of industrialization and entrepreneurship in the country, the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Adan Mohammed, joining us from our town studio. Good afternoon, and thank you for making the time to be with us today. We understand you have a busy schedule. We appreciate the time. Bonasias, talk to us about the importance of entrepreneurship in spurring economic growth. It's definitely something we're all talking about now, but perhaps you could make the linkages for us between entrepreneurship and growth of the economy in general for everybody.
Well, entrepreneurship is going to be the future of any economy, including ourselves here in Kenya. And many of the businesses that you see today that have proven to be successful. All started as small startups and transitioned to what they are today. So for that reason, the future of any economy, especially those that are private sector led like ours, would have to invest and create more players, you know, in the entrepreneurship value chain, so that people can start businesses, develop ideas, bring them to market, and be able to one day turn into the Coca-Colas, the IBMs, the BATs, you know, so that they are likely to look back and say, this is where we started. So this is really an exciting opportunity for us to have such a globally important conference on entrepreneurship to be happening here in Kenya.
All right, and let's talk about the government for a moment. We've been having various town hall meetings across universities, and they're providing opportunities for entrepreneurs to grow. What comes out of that is that the government needs to be able to use the services more of the entrepreneurs, and whether the government is keeping up with the level at which entrepreneurs are growing. So I'd like to ask you about that, whether the government is in tandem with entrepreneurs in the country, and indeed also in terms of providing an enabling environment for entrepreneurship.
Well, the various activities across the country where entrepreneurs are beginning to do activities is something that the government is paying a lot of attention to. You may recall recently, about a month ago, His Excellency the President was at Strathmore Business School meeting a number of private sector entrepreneurs, you know, where Strathmore Business School is hosting you know, the entrepreneurs in that particular place. And there are many others in other universities. We have the NILAB and others, all of who are trying to make sure that they can provide support to the entrepreneurs. Now, obviously when people are starting businesses, it's not as easy as it sounds. Many people have great ideas, but converting that into real business is what always proves to be a challenge. And the one most significant of that, even much more than access to finance, which I think a lot of people are complaining about at that early stage, is access to market. And what the government has done very, very, you know, proactively is to make sure that we create access for these people, small and medium-sized businesses that are transitioning to big businesses, by making sure that over 30% of government procurement is actually restricted for people who are young, women and people with disabilities, as a way of nurturing this talent. People bring in ideas and they just need the market. So for example, we have people who have started making pencils out of recycled papers. We have people who are, you know, introducing softwares, supply of things to governments, and goods as well. So the key thing is really to understand funding. There's a lot that the government is doing through a lot of agencies like Uwezo Fund, Women Fund, Youth Fund, you know, ICDC, one of the government parastatals, Kenya Industrial Estate. These are all organizations that the government have made possible and funded as a way of supporting people who are starting their businesses. So we are very much on top of what we need to do, but always there has to be room for improvement, and an opportunity like this Global Entrepreneurship Summit really gives us a chance to reflect more. What is working, what can we do more of, and what is actually not working from the entrepreneur's point of view. So a lot is being done. The private entrepreneurs are hearing, the government is paying a lot of attention, but we want to be able to reinforce most of what we are doing following such an important summit on the global platform.
All right, and you've talked about this being a great opportunity for us to audit ourselves in terms of where we are with entrepreneurship in the country. And you mentioned we will look at what's working, what's not, what we need to do more of. I'm curious, has your ministry thought of what the challenges are? Some talk about the low uptake of funds like Uwezo, but what more do you think we need to do to just continue to bridge the gap?
Well, basically, the entrepreneurship is an area that has a lot of complexities. And if you look and talk to a lot of our young people who are starting businesses, you ask them what are some of the issues that they face. And really, the first thing is are there sufficient ideas that are out and about? And we're very happy as a country to be able to say we have made some global transitions in introducing new innovations in the world, for example, in the area like M-Pesa and others. So within the technology area, a lot of ideas are coming in. But there are things that we feel are big challenges, will take time to fix. So areas like access to finance. And I think eventually private capital, investors who can put money with these entrepreneurs is quite important. And today there's a lot of risk averseness that we see financial institutions having towards startups and new businesses. And that is where really private equity funds, venture capital, feel that void. And I'm very pleased to say that the level of interest from private equity funds that are targeting private entrepreneurs in markets like ours is increasing. Today there are over 50 private equity funds that are operating in Kenya serving the East African market. And there are over 80 private equity funds out there who have expressed interest in supporting ventures in this particular market. But aside from that, I think there are the softer issues like managerial capability. Do people have enough experience and support to actually get their business from idea stage into small business and transition into large? These are all things that require mentoring, that require a very strong ecosystem that supports these people. And what we have seen is capacity facilities like iHub, NILAB, and many others are doing that to a large extent. And I think we now want to see how we can broaden that as government by providing some support directly to be able to accommodate more people. And many countries have gone through these kind of issues and challenges, and one of the key outcomes of this conference is to really pick up some of the good lessons that have worked in some other countries in other parts of the world for us to take forward.
All right, we talk a lot about government, but the private sector is also has a big role to play in terms of entrepreneurship. Bonasias, I was reading an article talking about the position of an entrepreneur in the C-suite and just having them sort of build innovation within private companies and private sector and private organizations. And we've seen the collaboration between Safaricom and Strathmore Business School with the iLab Africa. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the role of the private sector and what you would want them to do more of to spur entrepreneurship in the country.
First of all, that's a really good point. The government's role to a large extent is to provide an environment that, be it through policies or laws or regulations, that gives really conducive environment for entrepreneurship to thrive. And we are making some good progress on that, registering businesses today, enabling people to get connection to electricity, for example. Companies that get into distress, insolvency laws are being reviewed at the moment. So we're making it easy for people to operate, especially for the small businesses and startups. I think where the big opportunity for making entrepreneurship succeed is very much the private sector looking at this much more differently from what we have seen before. If you look at many of the big ideas today, including things like M-Pesa, you know, they started as simple ideas, but some bold steps were taken by private sector players. And what I think we'd like to see more of is for people, especially big businesses, to invest a certain amount of capital towards innovation. And I think if you look at many big companies, you know, financial statements, brochures, or strategies, they talk about dedicating some funds to innovation. But I think that needs to be much more bullish, fast-tracked, as opposed to just having it as ideas. The financial institutions in our country have for a long time been really averse towards supporting startups or new ventures or small and medium-sized businesses. I think the time has come now that, you know, commercial banks, private equity fund, you know, angel investors where wealthy individuals can actually come in and support entrepreneurs will all pool together in supporting these people. So the issue is we are much more aware of entrepreneurship, what it can do today than we were 5-10 years ago.
Okay.
And so as a country we are making the right steps, moving in the right direction. We just need to do more of, and I'm very encouraged that we should be able to look back 10 years, 5 years from now and see that some of the steps we've taken have really yielded fruits. All
right. Finally, before I let you go, we were at Strathmore Business School yesterday. We had a forum there, and we had nominated Member of Parliament Johnson Sakaja, whom, as you know, has been pushing for youth inclusion in government contracts and indeed in employment as well. Now, this is what he had to say, that beyond the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, that Kenya needs to have its own summit and just take a look at what we're doing locally. And he was proposing a national summit and also taking it down to the counties as a way of carrying on with the momentum locally, so that it's not just about President Obama's visit and once he is gone, what we need to do. What are your thoughts on that, about having our own national conversation? This is a global one, and auditing where we are with entrepreneurship as a means towards keeping the momentum going with this discussion in the country?
Well, in terms of providing support to the youth and making them succeed in their business, as I said, the government has made it possible for over 30% of government procurements to be dedicated towards supporting youth, women, and people with disabilities. Now, of course, that we may not have achieved that 30%, but a lot is being done in areas of registration, in enabling people to have much more access to finance, whether it's discounting local purchase orders through commercial banks, or indeed people borrowing money as a way of delivering or executing on a program. What I think we have in Kenya is we've got a number of activities that are run by different business schools, by the private sector, by corporations such as Safaricom that are really geared towards supporting entrepreneurship. The government is also, as I mentioned earlier on, doing a lot in its own right. What I think we need to do is to see how we can pool all the different funds that the government is today deploying towards supporting the young people and entrepreneurs into one central fund which can be managed centrally with a view to having measurables, targets that we can actually monitor on a regular basis. So summits such as this have been ongoing. As I mentioned, we had our own president and the private sector at Strathmore Business School about a month or so ago. Only yesterday, our president launched a pre-GES summit that covers over 580 entrepreneurs that participated. But I think it will not be a mistake for us to start thinking about maybe we need to have a regular annual dialogues on how much progress we are making in this particular area by getting the private sector initiatives, the government initiatives all aligned, and be able to have some expected measurable deliverables at the end of every year.
Thank you. That's a great point to end our discussion. We thank you again for your time. Cabinet Secretary Industrialization Adan Mohammed joining us live here on KTN's Newsdesk from our town studios, talking about pooling funds and talking about perhaps an annual conversation on entrepreneurship to keep the momentum going on this particular topic. I'd like us to stick with matters regarding Obama's visit. We want to take you to Mombasa now, where our reporter Francis Ontomwa spoke to some residents about their expectations both of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit and President Obama's visit.
Itakuwa ni historia ikiwa superpower wa kwanza ameingia Kenya. Kwa hiyo hata sina neno ya kusema, ni kwamba Mungu amulinde rais wetu Baraka via ambarikiwe dunia mzima, na akienda kwao akumbuke nyumbani kuja.
It's lots of excitement here in the streets of Mombasa ahead of President Barack Obama's planned two-day visit here in Kenya. Although will not be specifically coming in the city of Mombasa, already wananchi here are setting the agenda, what they call priority areas, that Obama should sit down with his counterpart Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta to be able to prioritize and make Kenyans' life better.
Hii safari ya Obama tumeifurahia sana kuja Kenya, lakini tungefurahi sana kama angekuja Mombasa kwa sababu ya tourism. Tourism hapa imekufa kabisa, watu wamefutwa kazi, business nyingi sana zimelala. Sasa kama angekuja Mombasa, angetoa motisha kwa watu, manake dunia nzima ingeona kuwa security iko sawa sawa.
Ana nafasi ya kula chochote anachotaka kula
lakini tungemkaribisha ale samaki, ale ngege, kwa sababu samaki lile ngege tunazituma zikienda kule na hatujui kama inamfikia State House anakula. So akiwa amekuja hapa akule ngege.
Mi first of all nashukuru vile Obama amefika Kenya, nashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu kwa sababu tumetarajia kwa muda mrefu sana, na Mungu ametenda, siku imefika. Tunashukuru, tumejua anakuja na mazuri amebeba kwa sanduku yake.
Atafute njia, haje na barabara, sio kwa ndege. Haje akiona barabara ya Mombasa kutoka Nairobi mpaka Mombasa, ili anjaribu kutuinua, ajue hapa ni kwao. Hiyo barabara iwe kama Amerika.
Security operators here in Mombasa are saying that they are planning a comprehensive security plan to ensure all goes well, as the world's most powerful man will be here in the country for 2 days. That is also something that cannot go unmentioned, is the fact that tourism stakeholders are saying that they are planning to also reap big from the visit by.
All right, so they say to whom much is given, much is expected. If only Obama could split himself in how many pieces, from Kogelo in Siaya to Mombasa to Nairobi. Great expectations for President Barack Obama and his visit. What are yours? Send them to us at KTN News KE and we'll share them live on air. We want to take a short break, but a reminder that that interview with Joel Macharia, who's the CEO of Abacus, will be joining us after the break to tell us more about his 9-month-old startup and just what he is doing in terms of providing access to financial data. This is KTN's Newsdesk. We'll be right back. Welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. Let's give you the sports news now. Kenya lost to Egypt by 3 straight sets in her first match of the Africa Volleyball Cup of Nations for men. The Kenyan men put up a fight but lost to a more superior side. Now, it was clear from the start of this clash that the Pharaohs were in a different class as they led 8-7 going into the first technical timeout. The hosts did not lose their lead in all the sets. The first set ended 25-19, but the second set was a bit sloppy as the Egyptians took 25-14. The Pool A match ended 25-18 in the third set. Morocco beat Paul Bitok's Rwanda 3-0 in sets of 25-23, 25-13 and 25-17 in a Pool B match. Meanwhile, Cameroon won 3-0 over Botswana. On KTN Home, well, that interview with that budding entrepreneur, well, she's not budding really, he's been doing this 10 years, but his company Abacus is a brand new company. If you are looking for information and financial data on the markets across East Africa, then my next guest is somebody you want to speak to. Switch over now to KTN News. That's channel 274 on DSTV, channel 14 on Zuku and channel 94 on GoTV. We'll